What's going on, fellow A-Plusers? It is I, your Morphinominal host, Adam Perez, back once again with a brand new Ultraman trigger review as we're about to go ahead and get into episode number 12. Very much so the halfway point of this season. I think we've got 12 and then maybe episode 13 next week. And I think that will, in fact, be sort of the midway for this particular season. I don't know how this works. If this is like the mid-season finale that they're working towards for this episode, then maybe like a recap next week. I'm not quite sure how that works, or if there's like a hiatus or something like that. If you guys can please kind of tell me the trajectory of Ultraman Trigger. Is there a hiatus? Are they just going to continue to drop brand new episodes, or is this very much like the mid-season finale-ish sort of thing? Definitely go ahead and let me know in the notes. But man, I gotta say, the story this season has been incredible, and for it to kind of all lead up to this sort of incredible moment here, finally filling us in on some of the blanks in regards to just the history and the lore of Ultraman Trigger, getting the opportunity to see Kengo be a massive part and a key part in regards to the battle that happened 30 million years ago and his direct involvement, and seeing how everything comes full circle. I mean, what a beautiful story told in here. Emotional, gripping, heartwarming at times. I mean, man, as emotional as it certainly gets, this episode and just storyline in general has truly had everything in here. I mean, there are moments where my jaw dropped, like the falling and destruction of the Nurse Desi in here was just awe-dropping to certainly watch on screen, and what they're able to do with like just the model sets mixed in with just great CGI elements. I mean, man, just breathtaking stuff. The intensity was ramped up, getting the opportunity to see the Gut Select team really panicking and doing everything to try and just avoid destruction and stuff. Understanding like the emotional and just the high stakes involved, and the dread of just knowing that the person that you had all your hope in Ultraman Trigger has honestly turned on you, sort of thing. So I thought the supporting cast here in Gut Select really do help carry this show when the focus isn't necessarily on Ultraman, and their intensity that they brought to this episode in regards to what they were seeing unfolding in front of them. Incredible and gripping stuff in here. But yeah, man, that's destruction of the Nurse Desi was just like, it was incredible to me. I was not expecting that scene in here at all. But this series continues to push the elements, and I'm really impressed with everything that we've certainly gotten so far this season, and especially in this episode. But let's go ahead and talk about this, guys. Let's go ahead and really dive deep into this, because this was the Kengo and the Trigger Dark show all day long, honestly. I know we laugh very much about Kengo's smiley sort of thing, but it's really hard to truly ignore just the hope and the positive outlook and just sort of like the bright future that Kengo constantly always sees, even when things certainly are dark. And the idea that he's so very influential with that hope and being able to inspire others, like somebody like a Yazari 30 million years ago, or even his own current teammates and things like that. I think it really does go a long way. So I truly appreciate his approach in here to pulling Trigger really to the light side, if you will. Like his perspective on the idea that while people certainly look to him as hope, talking about Kengo as hope and things like that, the real hope that Kengo experiences and the true light that Kengo experiences is the hope that Ultraman Trigger certainly brings, right? And we talked about this the previous episode, the idea that Trigger Dark already looks sort of, I don't want to say confused, but he definitely looks as though he's unsure about maybe some of his actions and the things that are going on, right? His interactions with Kengo certainly left him paused and kind of questioning things, hesitating for a minute and things like that. So there is clearly a side of him that's open to the idea of what Kengo's certainly saying, but clearly getting that pushback from the darkness side of him. So to be able to see Kengo express the idea that his version of hope looks like Ultraman Trigger because he's seen it with his own eyes, right? He's seen what Trigger can do in regards to saving people and bringing people hope, knowing that he's out there protecting everybody and things like that, right? So Kengo definitely has a very hopeful outlook for who Ultraman Trigger ultimately is because he's seen it in action. He's seen that good side of him, if you will. And so I love the idea that he extends his hand after a great battle of light versus dark, if you will, colliding and seeing exactly what the outcome is going to be. I love seeing clearly the light always going to win, but the idea of seeing dark at that point where he's got to sort of accept the light. And I think it does go a long way when you hear somebody like Kengo and Yuzari talking about the idea that sort of light exists in everyone. But I think by saying that, right, it also lends to the idea that we have the will to choose which path that we certainly go down. And clearly some people, especially in this episode, the Giants of Darkness, have clearly certainly chosen their path, but that doesn't mean that there's not light inside of them. It's certainly there. And because of the fact that Ultraman or Trigger Dark is of the darkness, the fact that Kengo is able to reach into that light and truly pull it out, I think is something absolutely amazing. And to be able to see that, if at least the way that I'm interpreting it is that once he accepts the light, then because of the fact that Kengo is truly the light, that's why he takes the mold and the presence of Kengo. And this is sort of what he carries around with him as the light as he goes forward from that particular moment. So I know he mentions the idea like, oh, you've been me all along, but I think he means the fact that, you know, when we discovered you on Mars, right, like the embodiment that we see trapped in that stone, that's technically me. I mean, that's us, right? We've been Ultraman Trigger all that time, but I do very much think that Trigger Dark is his own character with a hint of light inside, and when he accepts that light side offer from Kengo, that's the very first moment of light within this character. And so it's almost like his soul or his presence or whatever kind of molds and shapes Ultraman Trigger from that particular moment. So it's like Kengo's kind of split into the past 30 million years ago. And I love the fact that this episode gives us finally that breakdown, filling in the details about the battle with the Giants of Darkness, seeing how Ultraman Trigger fully pushed the Giants of Darkness into space, just, you know, solidifying them in rock, if you will, using his powers from the Eternity Core that Yuzari wind up finding him. So it was pretty cool being able to see the idea that his friends, with their hope for him, wind up sort of pulling him back to the present, but clearly leaving that mold and sort of essence of himself within Ultraman Trigger when he winds up landing on Mars and stays there for 30 million years. And it's crazy to kind of see this full circle kind of come together of Kengo meeting up with himself and his other presence. You know what I mean? I mean, that's pretty crazy to finally be in like full tune and in perfect alignment with yourself after a period of 30 million years, right? And I think because of that, it's really cool to see the idea that Kengo, when he finally does return, really has a different presence about him, right? I mean, granted, the guy's been through hell clearly over the past episode or so, but this is the most serious that I've ever seen sort of Kengo hold himself, because he finally understands now, right? He's definitely has connected the pieces. He understands the importance of himself, and really the fact that he's kind of the embodiment of light, because he is truly Ultraman Trigger and has been for the past 30 years. I mean, damn if Carmera didn't just do this all to herself, right? Because it is one of those things where she's the one that put the spell on Ultraman Trigger in the previous episode, which literally thrusted his soul, Kengo's soul and presence, out of his body back into time, into his very first meeting with Yuzari, and seeing how Ultraman Trigger finally comes to be, and the birth of Ultraman Trigger. Incredible stuff, man. I've seen it kind of come full circle. But so it makes sense. I can see now why Carmera is as pissed with Ultraman Trigger and Kengo as she certainly is now, and now making that connection that it's the same guy from the past, Kengo then, Kengo now, taking her love away from her once again and stopping her from getting her abilities. It's personal. It's personal now, if you ask me. And so I'm really interested to see what Carmera's going to do and how she's going to handle it, certainly going forward, because I'm pretty sure it's not the last of them that we have certainly seen. He clearly is a changed man. Kengo certainly is. And I'm so appreciative of this story and really seeing how it kind of all came together. I mean, awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping. I mean, man, I did not see this being how this story would come together when I first started it out. I mean, I feel like we were putting some pieces together, maybe connecting some mysteries, especially with Shizuma and stuff. We knew something fishy was going on, but to truly see Kengo's impact, I think also changes my perspective a little bit more of him if I were to go ahead and even rewatch this season from the beginning. You know what I mean? And I will say, quick honorable mention, that flower that we continue to see Kengo nourishing and trying to get to blossom. We saw that in last week's episode. It made an appearance in here also, I believe, in like a quick flashback moment, or maybe it was the recap. I can't remember, but it is I am curious what that damn flower means and represents, so I will be curious to see how that goes. But yeah, man, the Kengo and Ultraman Trigger stuff was incredible. Listen, if you guys interpret things differently, or if I'm viewing this incorrectly, please go ahead and let me know your thoughts in the live chat or the comment section box below, because this was a heavy episode, man. This was truly a heavy episode, and I don't know what type of episode that we're going to be getting next week, but Yuna at the end of this says, I kind of hope you explain all this Ultraman Trigger stuff to us and what it's all about. I hope so too. I hope that we do get, if it's not next week's episode, I do hope we get an explanation from Kengo, maybe from his particular point of view and his perspective, and really fill in the gaps for Akito, Yuna, and who knows, maybe even the Guts Select team and Shizuma. I am kind of curious how close to the vest he certainly might want to keep some of this stuff, but I am curious if we'll see Kengo try to explain it a little bit better in here. I also want to say I love the Yuna and Akito stuff that we wind up getting. Getting the opportunity to see how influential Yozari certainly was with helping out with that battle, right? Using a portion of the Eternity Core to go ahead and give it to Ultraman 30 million years ago for him to and clearly also at the same time sacrificing herself at that point in time to help give him those powers to stop the Giants of Darkness. Kind of seeing that come full circle, and Yuna in here finally getting an opportunity to hear Yozari's voice, pass along another portion of the Eternity Core this time, which gives him a brand new form in the Glitter Trigger Eternity form, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm glad that Yuna has come to embrace the Yozari stuff, and I also like the fact too of just the apology that she winds up giving him. It could have been anything. She could have been mad at him for not telling her his secret and things like that, right? But the fact that she apologizes for not being there for him and understanding the weight that he's probably carrying on his shoulders, I just thought that was a really thoughtful and mindful thing to truly say as somebody that like really cares about you, right? Like that's something that you tell somebody that you really truly care for, in the sense that you're important to me as a, as far as a friendship or whatever goes. But so I love the fact that she actually responds that way and not negative or like, oh my God, I was freaking out about you, but just the idea of like, I'm sorry that I wasn't there. I thought that was actually a really unique way of handling that, and I really appreciated that. But even the Akito stuff, super emotional in here again, right? The idea that this guy's been always so reluctant to accept their friendship, or at least openly admit that he's cool with the friendship that they have, seeing the danger that Kengo finds himself in. I love getting an opportunity to see that his friends have hope in him, and this is really where Akito sort of sheds his feelings, and kind of concedes to the idea that, you know what, I can't continue to put on this front anymore. You are important to me, my guy. I gotta help you in whatever way that I can to truly pull you back. So it was great to truly see his friends have a belief in him and enough to call Kengo back from the brink. Just really touching and heartfelt stuff I thought that we wind up getting from Yuna and Akito in here, right? Especially somebody like Akito who wanted that power for himself, and we knew how hard that was for him to certainly swallow early on in this season. But seeing the hope and the courage that Kengo has, I think he clearly has a full understanding, much better now, as to why he was certainly chosen and why he's certainly the one. So again, I do love the way that their friendship has certainly come full circle also. And quick shout out also to just the incredible action that we also wind up getting in this episode. I believe this episode was done by Koichi this week as well. I've been looking to kind of see his directorial episodes once again, now that I was made aware that he's actually the main director of this season, and he floored me in here, man. I really love just his content that he winds up producing. But the form that they wind up creating for the Glitter Trigger Eternity, incredible. It looks great. The idea here, though, is that it expels a ton of energy, so it's clearly not a form that can be sustained a long time. I almost want to, part of me always wanted to almost relate it to Goku and his Ultra Instinct form. The idea is he just expends so much energy, can't really keep it sustained for a long time, sort of thing. But the action sequences in here were just incredible. Getting to also see that they got themselves a new toy available, I'm assuming, or a new weapon, I should say. I can't, was it the glitter blade or something like that? And you could change the different colors, and it winds up having different forms of an attack. It looked incredible, and I'm kind of curious how often he may be using that in the future. It feels like it's like a break in case of an emergency sort of situation in this one. But so we'll see if it winds up popping back up. But yeah, carrying around that Eternity Core power is no joke, whatsoever. And then last honorable mention in here, guys, to kind of wrap up, Ignis, right? The one guy that continues to pop up randomly out of nowhere from time to time. And Ignis is definitely back here in this episode in time to certainly catch the battle between Ultraman Trigger and Ultraman Dark. And I will say, though, quick, before I get into the Ignis stuff, I was a little bit confused at first when Kengo gets pulled back after 30 million years and he's plummeting to Mars, but he gets pulled back to his reality. A part of me was also thinking, like, because they were having that struggle and that battle sort of in that astral plane of like Ultraman's mind, I wasn't sure if it was taking place in both time periods, right? Like current time and 30 million years ago, so that when Kengo won, right, and pulled him to the light, there was a part of me that thought to myself that the Trigger Dark that we saw in present day causing destruction to the city, I thought he would sort of go back to his Ultraman Trigger form, right? Because there was a body, there was a form, and then it turned into Trigger Dark, so I thought it was going to go back. So it did surprise me at the idea that we literally get sort of like a soul and presence that of Kengo that turns back into a solidified body, to kind of give him like a new form, if you will, and he winds up transforming into Ultraman Trigger again, so then causing two different bodies. But that was just your body, bro, you know what I mean? Like, so it did surprise me at first, but it makes sense kind of when I think about it, that it's not really Kengo's body, it's more the presence of Ultraman, I guess, when he calls upon him, sort of thing. So I get the idea being pulled out of that body. Now, it makes sense to me now that I think about it, but it did surprise me when I first saw it. But regardless, after that battle takes place, we see Ignis watching the battle, and this is a guy that has been truly wanting the most exquisite treasure in all the world, right? He's been mentioning that from the very first time we saw him. Universal and galactic treasure hunter that finds the most exquisite things. And while he certainly had his eye on Yuzari, make no mistake, this guy also had his eyes on the Ultraman Trigger power for himself as well. And so the idea of him wanting some sort of power for himself, now he's got the opportunity. And unfortunately for us, that comes in the form of the darkness. Again, light exists in all of us. Clearly, there's some light in Ignis. But you have to make a choice at some point, right? And clearly he winds up choosing and accepting the darkness, and thus it seems as though it's officially clung to him. And so, I mean, I'm kind of curious to see if we will see Trigger dark again, or if we're going to see him sort of in a new form, or like a whole new Ignis character in like a new form that winds up coming out of it. You know, I am kind of curious if he'll take a new shape, because it is a completely different character, maybe embodying the darkness now. So I am kind of curious in here. So yeah, somebody that wanted a power for his own, it will be interesting to see how he uses that power. Will he use it against Trigger? Will he use it against was it Herdram, right, the other giant of darkness that he's got a bone to pick with? I don't know, but Ignis just got a lot more interesting, right? Talk about popping up and being in the right place at the right time. Ignis definitely got the power that he was certainly looking for, the most clearly exquisite. So I'm eager to see what happens here, guys. But man, I could boast about this season forever, man. I'm having a blast watching this show, and I think even especially after reading the Ultraman Trigger interview that we did just past weekend on APlus Morphinominal, you know, Coach Koichi actually did an interview and talked a little bit about what he was trying to accomplish when it comes to Ultraman, how impactful of the series he was trying to make, and sort of like how Ultraman Tiga at the time was sort of a phenomenon, right? Why it has such a huge fan base. The fact of trying to embody something like that and kind of give it the same impact. Granted, I haven't seen Ultraman Tiga, but I can tell you right now, Ultraman Trigger for me as a series is truly affecting me and truly impressing me in regards to just a great storyline. And I'm having a really lot of fun with this particular series so far. But listen, I want to know your thoughts on this crazy episode 12, guys. How are you interpreting some of these things? What do you think about this series so far? What did you think about this episode? Any pros, cons? Was it legit for you? What did you guys think? These are just my A+ opinions. At the end of the day, I want to know yours. So let your thoughts be known in that live chat or the comment section box below after this particular video streams, and we'll definitely go ahead and have a further discussion about it all week long while we go ahead and wait for the next episode of Ultraman Trigger. So I expect this episode to go crazy and get a ton of views on YouTube. So I will be interested to see like how many views it'll get by next week, because this was a fantastic episode. But again, I want to know your guys' thoughts. But until next time, do me a big favor, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.